What's going on, guys? I got a real good show for you guys today. We are going to go through the investigative report of the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Well, it's not Orange County. It's I don't even know how to pronounce it. How do you say it? What is this? Wow. This, how they do with those Indian names in Florida, but whatever. Anyway, the Sheriff's Department where the Roger Fortson shooting occurred. We're gonna go through that investigative report. And I'm going to talk about how that officer failed Mr. Fortson. And I got to tell you guys, I said this from day one. I said, looking at this shooting objectively, this is not a justified shooting. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with, well, let's say it again, racial animus. It has nothing to do with any of those things. It was a poorly trained officer with bad judgment. That's it. That's it. That's the end of it. A poorly trained officer with bad judgment. And I told you guys the steps that he should have taken before he even went to Roger Fortson's house. And that's how I know that it's a poorly trained officer with bad judgment and not a racist officer, as some people on the internet are trying to make it out to be that it's a racial issue. It's because before this officer even knew the race of Roger Fortson, he made bad choices. He made bad tactical decisions, which resulted in him putting himself in a life and death situation where he chose to fire on a man that lawfully had a gun in his own apartment, therefore killing him. And I'm going to tell you guys, big shout out to Lenny23 in the building. I'm going to tell you guys another prediction that I'm going to make before we get into the weeds of this. I want you guys to pay attention here, because I'm not going to say I told you so, but I am going to say I told you so when it happens. They're going to charge the officer. And they're not going to charge this officer because of this report that we're going to go through. They're going to charge the officer because he should be charged. This officer may not be a bad person. He may be a family man. He may be a pillar of the community. But sometimes life puts us in a position. And sometimes you being placed in that position is your own doing. Like, you decide to take a job like being a cop. But sometimes life puts you in a position where you have one instance that you have to make a choice. And if you make the wrong choice, your choice affects the lives of other people, and it affects your life for the rest of your and their lives. And this was one of those situations. This was a crossroad in Eddie Duran's life. That is the deputy sheriff who's been terminated. This was a crossroads in Eddie Duran's life. This was a crossroads in Roger Fortman's life. And Eddie Duran made a choice that has sent both of those lives on trajectories that neither one of these individuals believed or could even fathom that their life would be on that trajectory. For Roger Fortman, his life was on the trajectory of death. He got killed. And for Eddie Duran, I believe that the trajectory of his life now, because of the decision he made, the choice to go this way in the fork of the road, is that he's going to end up incarcerated. Is he going to end up spending the rest of his life in prison? No. This type of shooting usually results in somebody doing between 5 and 15 years in prison if you're a police officer. The police officer in Texas who shot at Tatiana Jefferson, he got 10 years in prison. The police officer who shot what's his name? Both them Jacques, or both them. You guys know what I'm talking about. The guy who was in his house smoking weed, relaxing, and he was a financial he worked for a big financial company. He had his master's degree in business and all that good stuff in finance. The young man who had a bright future, and then here comes this police officer who just barged into his house thinking that it was her house. She went into the wrong damn apartment. And then so she sees a guy in the apartment and she shoots him, when in actuality he was in his own apartment chilling, watching TV. And she just kills him. And both of them John. That's his name, both of them John. She got like around 8 to 10 years. The police officer who accidentally, I think it was in Brooklyn Village or something like that, in Minneapolis. The one who shot that career criminal, the thug, the gangster, when he was trying to flee police and she was trying to taser him, but she pulled the wrong instrument out, the wrong tool out. She ended up shooting him instead of tasering him. And she said, oh my God, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Right. Instantly, she regretted what she did. It was a mistake. She ended up doing like 4 years in prison. So this officer's not looking at a long time in incarceration, but he is going to get charged and he's most likely going to get convicted. So I want to go through it, guys. Regular Degler in the building. Appreciate you guys for coming through. I know it's an early morning live. We may not get a lot of people here, but hopefully the replay crew will come in strong and show love and spread the facts and truth of this, because we're not going to give you any spin. We're not here to spin this. We're not here to divide us on racial lines. We're not here to divide us on political lines. We're here just to search for the truth, and that's what we're going to look for. So before we get to the report, I want to get to an article that's going to pretty much lay out the most pivotal part of this case, and that's the 911 calls. How did Officer Eddie Duran get there? Why was he even there? And I think we got to talk about that first before we even go to the investigative report by the Sheriff's Department. So I want to go ahead and go to military.com, where they're going to basically do an article on the 911 calls. Let's bring that in here and let's talk about it. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys, because this is so important, man. A lot of things were done wrong in this, and it's very shameful because really nice young man lost his life. DW3 in the building. Thanks for coming through. Strategic Guys members. The members are strong in the chat. I appreciate you guys. Please make sure that you sign up to be a Strategic Guys member if you haven't already. It's really, really good, and I drop exclusive content over there just for the members. All right, so we're on military.com. Let's go through this. So the 911 calls, police recorded, raised more questions to Senior Airman Roger Fortman's shooting death. This is before the updated information that Deputy Eddie Duran was terminated. So let's go through this article. Newly released police recordings and phone calls from Florida Sheriff Department raised more questions over how the deputy who shot and killed Senior Airman Roger Fortman in his home this month was led to the apartment by bystanders. The original audio of the 911 non-emergency call shows that a person who works at the building was relying secondhand information on the apartment number where the alleged disturbance was happening. Additionally, a subsequent 911 call from a neighbor details reacting to the shooting. So this is what I told you guys when we initially covered this, right? You can't go off of secondhand information. You have to try and at least attempt to do an investigation. That's why I said no officer worth his salt would have knocked on Roger Fortman's door without trying to talk to the complainant. It's simple. You got a call from management. You get there. You're talking to management. You ask the question, who's the person who told you about this disturbance? What apartment do they live in? Let me go talk to them first before I go talk to 1401, right? So Fortman, 23, a senior special operations airman. So people kind of brush off of this. This guy was special ops. This kid was doing big things. All right. A special operations airman. This guy was doing special ops, guys. This guy was an American hero. Was shot multiple times with seconds of answering the door to his Fort Walton Beach apartment on May 3rd. The deputy responded to the cause of disturbance, so Fortman had his legally owned firearm held to his side and immediately opened fire, giving the airman no time to respond. The sheriff's office released 3 heavily redacted information to military.com on Tuesday. The records include the initial 911 call, another 911 call around the time of the shooting, an incident report completed at the time of the shooting, as well as dispatch notes. Let's get down to the meat of it. Check this one out. Dispatch call record sheets provided by the Okaloosa, that's what it is, the Okaloosa, not Orange County, Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office, identified 2 apartment numbers that were not Fortson's unit. So in the past, when people have called to complain about this violence, they complained about 1101 and 1404, not 1401, ladies and gentlemen. So when people say that the police were sent to the wrong apartment, they are not wrong. Now, people say that the officer went to the wrong apartment. I draw a distinction between that. Officer Duran went to the correct apartment. That was the apartment he was sent to, 1401. But in the grand scheme of things, I think it's clear at this point that there was nothing happening in 1401. So a faulty complaint was made against 1401, but the officer did show up to the correct department that he was directed to. We heard it in the recording, in the body worn camera, when the lady says, oh, I don't know what apartment. Oh, you know what? It's 1401. Where else was the officer supposed to go? He had to go to 1401 because that's where he was sent. But if he would have did his job correctly and he had better training, he would have went to the complainant's apartment first and verified what the apartment was before he went there. Now, maybe he'd have went to the complainant's apartment and the complainant would have sent him to 1401 anyway. It doesn't matter. He'd have did his due diligence. But we'll even get into that because even if he'd have went to the complainant's apartment, when we look at the investigative notes, it shows that he would have gotten unreliable information that would have resulted in him probably not going to the apartment in the first place. So let's keep going because this apartment complex appears to be a madhouse, and you guys will figure it out as we keep going. So the other two apartments were written on the logs, and it was not immediately clear why they were mentioned. Florida statute dictates what information can be public. We'll skip over that. The deputy who shot Forson has been placed on leave. We know that he's now been fired. Let's skip over that. We got regular Degler, strategic guys member, Philip and Brussels, another strategic guys member in the building. Appreciate you guys for coming through. The call for the reported disturbance came to Okaloosa County Sheriff's non-emergency line May 3rd from a woman working at the front desk of the leasing office of a residential complex. The woman provided 911 with information on a disturbance she received from someone else and told the dispatch the apartment number was 1401, Fortson's unit. I literally just got off the phone with her, said the woman. She didn't even give the woman's name. Unbelievable. Whose name was redacted from the records and the phone call. Or I guess she did, but so they redacted it. So my apology. She did give the woman's name. So now that's even worse for the officer because he knew the woman's name and he probably knew her apartment too. Let's keep going. She said that it was going on for like 15 or 20 minutes. When she called me, she said that she was calling me because it sounded like it was starting to get out of hand, okay? She said that it sounded like it's sort of getting physical, so I'm not really sure. We'll next, when we read that investigative report, we will hear the police interviewing this mystery woman. And this mystery woman is fucking nuts. She is. This was an apartment complex. You guys know that the military don't pay you a lot of money. Even if you're a special operator, military, thank you for your service, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a patriot, but let's be honest, we do not pay our military servicemen members a lot of money. So maybe Fortson could not afford to live in a good place because this place is a madhouse. Let's keep going. The dispatch officer then asks, is there any way you're able to hear or see them? The woman from the leasing office walks over to the area and says, I'm right outside the unit, but I can't hear. They're on the 4th floor, so I can't hear anything from here as of right now. So she went to the unit because, you know, in Florida, they'll have like massive apartment complexes with units. They're like built like condos, like those vacation condos. Apartment buildings look like timeshare condos in Florida. So there's like the building 3. And then you'll have multiple unit 3, and then you have multiple apartments in unit 3. Then right next to is unit 4, and there's like dozens of them, right? And then they'll have shared pools and common areas and stuff like that, right? That's how Florida kind of builds their apartment buildings. So she went outside the building, but she didn't actually go up the stairs to the apartment to see if she heard anything. And I don't blame her for that, because if you believe that there might be some violence going on, you're not going to, put yourself in harm's way. You're not a cop. That's not what you're getting paid to do. But she actually went out there to the unit, but she couldn't hear anything, probably because nothing was happening. But to her credit, she was on the 1st floor, and these allegations allegedly were coming from the 4th floor. She didn't hear anything. So let's keep going. The leasing office employee also relayed a story to the dispatch officer on May 3rd about how a few weeks prior, she had a disturbance between a man and a woman while walking on the sidewalk. Based on a call she received from the tenant, she thinks that it was, so she's putting her anecdotal information that really is not relevant because she had the wrong person, but it's putting fuel on the fire. Like, oh, I even heard stuff happening there. So now let's keep going. Other records from Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office obtained by military.com earlier this month showed that since the beginning of 2023, listen to this, guys, there had been 10 police calls to another unit in Fortson's building. apartment 1412 for welfare checks, disturbances, and emergency medical services call for a hemorrhage. There have been no calls for Fortman's apartment in 1401 within that same period. This further shows that the deputies got the wrong apartment, contrary to what the sheriff continues to assert. This is from the attorney who's saying that, not the person reading the article. According to attorneys for Fortson's family, as well as the body-worn camera footage of the shooting, the senior airman was home alone with his dog, and he's doing FaceTime with his girlfriend. All right, let's keep going. Here we go. Meanwhile, a subsequent 911 call came on May 3rd, provided to military.com by the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office, was placed from another resident of the building who said they'd been arguing for almost an hour now and then reported they heard gunshots. Gunshots. These people are nuts there. They're crazy. There was no gunshots. So now a different person allegedly called and said, yo, they've been arguing for an hour upstairs. And I hear gunshots, 3 gunshots. Let's keep going. I just heard that what sounded like 3 or 4 gunshots and a bunch of running and screaming to call a dispatch. I know there's a kid up there, and that's why I'm freaking out. There was no gunshots. There's no record of gunshots or assault or abuse or child abuse or domestic violence or anything on this caller's call. These people are crazy in that building. They're calling in bullshit calls to 911. The individual's name and unit number was redacted from the audio call. The Okaloosa County Sheriff remains committed to transparency, etc., yada, 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 yada. Anybody who's worth their salt as a cop knows that 911 calls are extremely unreliable. That's why we have to go and do an investigation. People call 911 just like they call Child Protective Services. Get into an argument with a chick. Let me not say it. I'm going to get in trouble. Get into an argument with somebody and you have kids. See how quickly you get Child Protective Services called to your house for fake allegations of child abuse. People do stuff like that. People call Child Protective Services and lie on you so they can make your life difficult. People call 911 and have the cops sent to your house for no reason to make your life difficult. People prank call 911. We get this all the time. We get fake calls all the time. That's why when you come to these scenes, you have to do an investigation to kind of figure out what's going on. Clearly in this building, maybe they had tons of elderly people. Maybe they have mentally ill people. Maybe they just have super nosy Karen type neighbors. But people are calling 911 left and right to complain about things that are not being substantiated by the police. So already, you know what we call that in my job? We call that chronic callers. We would have identified this location as a location for chronic callers. So now when officers see that this is a chronic location, we automatically move with even more skepticism than we normally would move if this was the first time getting the call from this address, from this location. This was a chronic call location where people would make unsubstantiated claims to 911. So now let's go over to the investigation. And then after that, we're going to watch the FaceTime video of Fortman with his girlfriend after he was shot. All right. We're going to see what the officers did or didn't do. We're going to listen to what's going on. It's a little disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. But for the YouTube moderators, we will not see any blood, any gore. We will not hear gunshots. We just hear the interaction and the talking of the officers and Mr. Fortman in the last moments of his life. You do not see Mr. Fortman. You do not see a dying person, okay? So please, YouTube, stop restricting and limiting my videos for nothing, okay? There are more violent things on YouTube. There are more salacious things on YouTube, you know, that you should be policing. You should not be policing people covering the news. All right, let's go over to the investigation. All right. Wow. Okay. Oh, man. I don't even know if I can read this. This is retarded. Okay, I got it. Okay. All right. So this is the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department investigation. This is not an investigation that's going to that determine whether an officer is guilty of a crime. The purpose of this is an internal investigation. The purpose of this investigation was to determine whether Officer Eddie Duran violated Okaloosa County Sheriff's policies and procedures. Okay, so I didn't read this yet, but I'm not about to just read you like a 30-page report and read you the fluff. We're gonna kind of skim through it. You guys know that before going into policing, I was in internal affairs for the state of New York for the Department of Corrections, Community Supervision. I did this for a living. I wrote reports like this, internal affairs reports, so I know kind of how to skip through it and get to the meat and potatoes. But this is available on the internet. You can go to the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department website, and because this is breaking news and it's like one of the hottest tickets in that region right now, you'll easily be able to locate this document and download it for yourself. All right, so involved parties, let's read out the pedigree of Mr. Duran. All right, so Deputy Eddie Duran, deputy who shot Mr. Fortson. Point two, Deputy Duran was first employed by OCSO in July of 2019, so he's a rookie. He resigned in November 2021 and then returned in June 2023. Interesting. I'd wonder why he had a break in service. That'd be interesting to find out. Duran was current on response to resistance training, which was last completed in June 28th, 2023. I don't know what that training is. But it's probably relevant here. That's why they're citing that particular training. Deputy Duran was current with his agency firearms qualification, which was last completed in June 8th of 2023 with iron sights, and again on June 7th, 2023 with the pistol-mounted optic sight. Additional training. Iron sight is the sights that come equipped with the gun. They're basically the metal sights that's fastened to the top of the gun. Usually it'll have maybe a tritnite dot or something like that for you to be able to focus on. That's what iron sights are. It's basically stock. And then, so they trained him in June on this, how to fire the gun with the stock sights. And then they trained him with the optic sights as well. All right, let's keep going. Additional training completed by Deputy Duran includes active assailant refresher training, Florida Criminal Justice Executive Institute discriminatory profiling, human diversity, professional traffic stops training on October 25th, 2023, FCJEI domestic violence on November 4th, and active shooter training on November 11th for 2023. So all his training is pretty current. It's still fresh in the brain, still current. Then number two, Mr. Fortman, resident of the apartment Deputy Duran was dispatched and directed to. I agree with that. That's the point I basically have been making. Stop saying that he went to the wrong apartment. He went to the correct apartment. He was just sent there off of bad information. Subject who answered the door with a firearm in his right hand. Subject shot for Deputy Duran. Now, let's go to the narrative. On May 23rd, 2024, approximately 16:24 hours, call for service was received concerning a disturbance in progress. Minutes before OCSO received the call for service, the neighbor residing blank, Mr. Roger Forson, 1401 apartment, called the apartment complex main office to report hearing a disturbance in the apartment. I think that the if the family of Fortson can prove that there was no disturbance coming from Fortson's house, I think that they should sue this neighbor, because this keeps happening time and time again where neighbors, community members erroneously call the police and people end up dead. They should sue that person, because let that person prove in civil court that they were acting in good faith. But let's keep going. This call was recorded by the apartment complex. So they recorded. So they have a recording. An employee at the apartment complex answered the call. And the person reported. So remember, there's redactions here. So work with me, okay? I live in blank, and my neighbor blank are arguing. I feel like they are getting a little handsy. They, listen to this, because this is about to be disputed soon. I feel like they're getting a little handsy. This person is going to dispute their own statement when the police actually question them. But this is the statement that they gave the apartment complex. I feel like they are getting a little handsy. The people blank, me, they've been arguing for like 30 minutes. Maybe they do that for a while, but it sounds like it's getting a little handsy. I don't know what to do. I don't want to go blank there and, make a little blank unintelligible. Blank told blank could call the police, but the apartment complex could not make contact with the neighbors. Blank did not say she would call law enforcement. She did not call law enforcement until after she heard shots fired. So the lady called the police after the young man was dead. But instead of calling the police off the gate and being the one on the record calling the police, she called the management. You guys know I dabble in property. If a tenant calls me, I'm like, why are you calling me for? Call the cops. I just got to make sure the lights and the water is on and the place ain't falling apart. Don't call me about what you got going on with your neighbor. Call the freaking police. But let's keep going. However, Blank, however, did call the OCSO non-emergency line to report the disturbance. Blank call into the OCSO communication center was recorded. Let's go to the next slide. While reporting the disturbance, the OCSO communication officer asked for the address of the disturbance. Blank answered, it's going to be 3319 Racetrack Road. Northwest is the exact address of the building, and the apartment number going to be 1401. The communication officer asked if they were still fighting, and Blank replied, yes. I literally just got off the phone with her. She said that it's going on for a while, like 15 to 20 minutes, and she said that she called right when she called me. She said that she was calling me because it sounded like it was starting to get out of hand, and it sounded like a man and a woman. Mind you, I just got to make note, like when we talk to each other, like there's a difference between how people write and how people talk. When we talk to each other, we really talk crazy to each other, but yet we understand it. Because you're like, reading this person talk is like, what the hell are they saying? But if they said it to me, I would understand it. But when I literally have to read verbatim, like a transcription of what they said, it's like, we kind of talk missing a lot of things that the individual listening fills in subconsciously without even realizing that the person didn't finish off what they were saying. But anyway, let's keep going. Communication asked if it was physical, and Blank said she said that it sounded like it started getting physical. All right. Blank added, a few weeks ago I was walking on the sidewalk, like it was close. All right, so this is we'll skip that part because we know about that part. That's the manager saying they heard fighting a few weeks ago. Now, OCSO communication dispatcher called through their computer-aided dispatch, their CAD. I'm familiar with the CAD system. To Deputy Eddie Duran, and since I am familiar with the CAD system, I know that all the information that goes into the CAD system, it's a wealth of information that goes into the CAD system. So Eddie Duran had a lot of information at his disposal. To Eddie Duran's mobile computer terminal in his patrol vehicle and over radio. So you had a visual representation of everything that's in the CAD system. Everything that was set up in that above paragraph I just read was in the CAD system. And then he also got confirmation by speaking to dispatch over the radio when they do what's called reading back the job, where dispatch will actually tell you what the job is. So you now can read it for yourself, and dispatch will read it back to you, and it'll also give you additional information that's not in the CAD. So he had a wealth of knowledge before he actually went on this job. So let's keep going. In his patrol car, the following are portions of the radio traffic communication listed as CM. Deputy Duran is listed at ED. Corporal Casey Duh is listed as CD. CM. So that CM is going to be dispatch. I think so. Yes. The following portion of radio traffic communication. So dispatch is CM. CM. Copy this. We'll skip through that. We kind of heard that already. So let's keep going. The following events are captured by Deputy Duran's body-worn camera. All right, I want to skip through this because we saw this already. All right. We saw this. We watched it with our own eyes. We know what happened. All right. I'm going to read from right here. Read right here because this is important. This kind of like rehashes out what he did at the door. So Deputy Duran passed the door to apartment 1402 on his right. Duran passed an open stairwell as he approached the door to apartment 1401. Duran was in front of the door for apartment 1401. There's a clear placard just to the left of the door. Directions in relation to the door are from the perspective of facing the door and near eye level with 1401 displayed just past the door. There's another balcony railing. Beyond the railing is a 4-story drop to the ground. Deputy Duran leaned closer to the door of 1401 in an effort to listen. Deputy Duran knocked on the door for the first time. Deputy Duran moved back, left to the door towards the small railing on the side of the south side of the breezeway. A dog inside of the 1401 barks. Deputy Duran moved north, crossing in front of the door and positioned himself to the right side of the door. A voice from inside 1401 could be heard. The voice was not clear, but it probably said, "Who is it?" The voice could be heard again. The voice was not clear, but possibly said, "How the fuck the police?" Deputy Duran knocked on the door for the second time. After knocking, Deputy Duran loudly said, "Sheriff's office, open the door." He remained right of the door. Deputy Duran crossed the door again and positioned himself left of the door. Deputy Duran knocked on the door for the third time. After knocking, Deputy Duran for a second time loudly said, "Sheriff's office, open the door." Plus 2 frames. The door starts to open. All right. Then we know what happened after that. You get shot. So let's keep going. All right. I want to get to. All right. Let's go. Oh, let me read this. Something interesting. It says Deputy Dixon transitioned from clearing apartment, renting aid to Mr. Fortson. The deputy had cleared the apartment. Deputy Range transitioned from clearing the apartment to rendering aid to Mr. Fortson. Deputy Duran said, "I'm going to step out," as he exit the apartment. Deputy Duran transitioned from clearing the apartment to rendering aid to Mr. Fortson. Deputy Duran said, motherfuck. Deputy Duran started walking north in the breezeway away from the apartment 14-1. While he was walking in the breezeway, Deputy Duran struck a wall with his right fist and said, "Fuck." Deputy Duran, who had turned around and was walking south in the breezeway, was approached by Corporal Casey Duh. Corporal Duh asked, "You all right?" Deputy Duran answered, "Yes." As soon as he opened the door, there's a gun. All right. So now let's get back into this investigation, because this is where it's going to get interesting. I haven't read this yet, but I heard it gets really interesting. I conducted a sworn interview with blank in my office located on OCSO headquarters. The interview was recorded by body-worn camera. The pertinent information is as follows. Blank had been an airman in the United States for nearly a year at the time of the incident of May 3rd, 2024. He had lived in his apartment, Mr. Fortson, 14-1, since he had lived in her apartment, blank, Mr. Fortson and 14-1, since November 2023. Blank did not know Mr. Fortson. However, she knew he was also an airman. Oh, okay, so this is another airman who lives in the building. Okay, she described seeing Mr. Fortson on her Ring camera in an Air Force uniform. Said there was before my subscription ended. Well, if this is kind of weird. Like, if you were airman and you got another airman that live in your apartment complex, one would think that one day you see him in the hallway, you'd be like, "Hey, we both service people. That's what's up. We both airmen." Like, I would actually try and reach out and say what up to somebody that I think is serving with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, both of them are active duty, but whatever. So this is like a neighbor or something like that. But let's keep going. That was before my subscription ended, but he was on the phone and he was like, "Oh, I almost walked into the wrong apartment." So when I seen that, I was like, who's coming to the door? Blank did not have that Ring video. Blank never spoke with nor met Mr. Fortson. Blank said she believed Mr. Fortson was in a relationship because she had heard a female voice coming from his apartment. Mr. Fortson and the female had heard in the past been very loud at times. All right, let's keep going. So this is the neighbor saying that Fortson was loud with his girlfriend. Blank said before it was just usually banter back and forth, be like, I hit Blank a couple times, like, "Hey, be quiet." He never went blank. Never was ever the same extent as it was on the 3rd, May 3rd, 2024. That's why I called. So this is a nut job who's in the military who called saying that he's beating up a chick that doesn't exist in a goddamn apartment, and this woman's a service woman. So now we know that an Air Force service woman is one of the reasons why Roger Fortson is dead. But let's keep going. All right. Wow. That's why I called, because it was concerning. Because I was like, it's never been like this, and I've been here for 6 months. You know what I mean? So that's why it was kind of concerning for me. I comment she had told the leasing agent she thought Mr. Fortson was arguing with someone else. Blank, blank. Acknowledge that. I asked her why she thought Mr. Fortson was in an argument. Blank answered, "They were really loud. I could hear him." They were really loud. I could hear him. Not I could hear them. But let's keep going. I asked if she could hear what they were saying. She said, "I couldn't hear like anyone back, but I just assumed because he was so loud." You couldn't hear nobody else in the apartment, but you assumed somebody else was there because he was loud? Do we not have phones in 2024? Oh my God. I asked if she could hear what They were saying, she said, I couldn't hear like anyone back, but I just assumed because he was so loud. Blank described being able to hear sounds coming from the apartment. Blank heard 1401 through an air conditioning vent in her bedroom. This lady's crazy. Listening to sounds through your vent? She explained, if you stand right near the vent, why are you standing near the vent? You can hear everything. And I just so happened to be on my bed while they was going on so I could hear. This lady is nuts. She said, Blank said she did not hear the voice of who Mr. Fortson was speaking to on May 3rd. However, she had heard a female voice in the apartment before. Do you guys see what police officers have to work with at times? That's why it's important to speak to the complainant before you go to a suspect's house. Come on, man. This is like police officer 101. Let's keep going. Blank said she had heard scuffling during the argument. I asked her to describe the scuffling. She said it was really like, you can hear footsteps. Yo, I swear to God, guys, I did not read this investigative report before I got here. This is like, we are reacting to this together. She said she heard scuffling. This investigator is doing an excellent job asking the right questions. She said she heard scuffling. He said, can you describe scuffling? She said it was like footsteps. They were really loud, really, really loud. And it was like, it would be constant footsteps. Oh my God. And it would stop for a little bit. And then you would hear talking, scuffling. It's just kind of like rubbed her feet on the floor of my office loudly. Kind of like that. And you like, can you hear it? It's like clear as day through the vent. So I was like, okay, something's going on. Does this not sound like somebody who's mentally ill? The Air Force needs to give this lady a psychological evaluation because she's nuts. It's like clear as day, though, through the vent. So I was like, okay, something's going on. Somebody's moving something. Or I just don't know if they're bumping into each other, just passing or something like that. I was like, something is going on. But since he was yelling, I was like, okay, something is wrong. Wow. I asked Blank if she could make out anything Mr. Fortson said. She answered yes. A couple of things. It was two things that really kind of stuck out in particular. He was like, sick of you lying to my face. You're a fucking liar. Okay? So his girl, let's say he really was arguing, this lady is not nuts. His girl is a fucking liar. It wouldn't be the first woman that's a liar. Wouldn't be the last. If it was in reverse, he wouldn't be the first man who was a liar. He wouldn't be the last. He's having an argument with his girlfriend. Maybe. I don't even know if that argument really happened because this lady sounds nuts. But what's the problem? He's in his house. This, that, and the third. And that was the thing that I was kind of like, okay, they're fighting. That's what those were indicators that they were fighting to me. Wow, this is crazy, man. Wow, let's keep going. Blank said because of the language used by Mr. Fortson and his tone, she believed he was fighting in an argument with someone. Blank said that she had been listening to what she had described for approximately 30 minutes before she called the leasing office. I asked Blank if she thought she was listening to a physical disturbance, and she said yes. I asked her if she thought it was weird she had not heard the other person's voice, and she explained, I didn't really think about it like that. Wow. I'm thinking maybe he's yelling at her, like maybe sometimes when you're getting yelled at, you just kind of like, I'm in trouble, like the nature of the conversation. So I'm just kind of like, okay, maybe she's not yelling back, but I never said, I was like, okay, I hear one person, but I don't hear a sound. I didn't break it down like that. All I knew was just for sure that he was. Blanks said she believed there were two people in the apartment. On the day of the incident, investigator Tyler Coloner obtained a written statement from Blank. Investigator Coloner recorded his interview of Blank on his body-worn camera. Let's see what investigator Coloner. So this was the internal affairs investigator who sat her down in the sheriff's department, got a statement of her. This is the detective who was sent out there to investigate the shooting, to figure out what's going on. This is him now interviewing her on the scene at that moment, right? And I wish we could get the body-worn camera of this, right? So now let's listen to that investigator's his report. When investigator was interviewing blank, had expressed she was concerned about the well-being of a child she believed to be blank. I asked blank if she had heard a child blank before. She said yes. So now she's saying that there's a child that lives with Roger Fortman. We know that that's not true. The man was childless. There's no kid that lived there. I asked blank what made her believe that there had been a child blank. She answered, you can hear the laughing and the little baby footsteps. She's crazy. She's crazy. I clarified that she was sure a child had been in an apartment at times over the last 6 months, and she said she was not mistaking a dog for a child. She said for sure. I again asked if that could have been the dog she heard. She shook her head no. She's nuts. Blank said she had never seen Mr. Fortson's dog. She acknowledged the footsteps may have been from a dog, but she added, but you can hear because like mommy that hear her crying sometimes. Mommy this, mommy that. I clarified she had heard a child at times in the apartment. She answered in the affirmative. I asked blank if she was sure the argument she had heard from blank her. She replied, yeah, sure, 120,000%. This lady is mentally ill. Blank said she heard the gunshot and called 911. Blank did not hear Deputy Duran when he announced his presence at the door of 1401. She had all the stuff from Fortson, but she didn't hear the deputy, because we know that when he said Orange County Sheriff's Department, he said it loud. He should have said it immediately when he knocked. He did not, but eventually he said it, and he said it loud. She heard all the stuff from Fortson's apartment, but she didn't hear nothing from the sheriff's deputy when he announced himself. Okay, let's keep going. She was told the operator that deputies were already on scene and that the operator could not discuss what happened. On 5/21/2024, I conducted a sworn interview with blank in my office located in OCSO headquarters. Mr. Martin McDonald was present, blank attorney. The interview was recorded by body-worn camera. The pertinent information is as follows. Blank had been a leasing consultant for the apartment complex where he had an incident occurred for a year and 3 months. Where the incident occurred for a year and 3 months. I'm not sure. We'll figure this out. Blank had been leasing consultant for the apartment complex where the incident occurred for a year and 3 months. Oh, I understand now. He had worked there for a year and 3 months. My apologies. Blank received a call from blank about the disturbance in Mr. Fortman's apartment. Blank said blank had said the disturbance sounded like it was getting handsy. Blank asked blank if there was anything she blank could do. Miss Blank said, I explained to her that there was nothing I could do. I can go knock on the resident's door and tell them, hey, what's going on? So I told her, you can, if you feel comfortable, you could call the police, or if not, I could call the police. So she hesitated and decided to call the non-emergency number. I asked blank why she called law enforcement. She replied, so my thought process was, I don't want her to not call the police or something actually going on. So because she hesitated, so I stepped outside, and that's when I called the non-emergency line, because I was like, I don't want her not to call the police, and me thinking that she did call the police and something happening. So that's when I decided to call the non-emergency line and make contact. Blank made copy with Deputy Duran when he arrived on scene. I asked blank about the incident which occurred weeks before on May 3rd that she had described to OCSO Communications and Deputy Duran. I asked where she was located, and she heard the yelling and the slapping noise. She said she was on the sidewalk on the ground level. She was not on a 4th floor breezeway. Now, this speaks for itself. Let's keep going. I asked if she could tell where the yelling and noise had come from prior to the current incident. She said no. Blank clarified that she told the deputy she was not sure where the yelling came from, and she was referring to the incident which had occurred prior to his arrival on May 3rd. Let's keep going. I asked blank if she told communication and deputy during the incident was occurring in 1401. She responded in affirmative. She asked blank if she was sure. Blank said the disturbance was 1401. She said yes. Blank said she could not confirm that the incident had occurred weeks prior, came from Mr. Fortson or apartment 1401. She said the prior incident occurred near 1401 and sounded similar to what blank had just reported. So she blank throughout thought they may be related. Blank says she dealt with Mr. Fortson around 8 times in a work capacity. She gave Mr. Fortson a tour of the complex and helped him complete his paperwork when she completed his lease. She had also helped with packages and typical office activities. On the day of the incident, Investigator Tyler obtained a written statement from blank. Investigator Colonna recorded the interview on body-worn camera. 5/22/2024, conducted a sworn interview with Deputy Duran in front of my office. All right, so let's go. This is what Duran had to say. This is big here. Deputy Duran has a bachelor's degree in criminal psychology and is roughly halfway through a human services counseling master's degree with a focus on crisis response and trauma. Deputy Duran served the United States Army from 2003 through 2014 with a combat deployment in Iraq in 2008. Deputy Duran started his military career in intelligence. Then in 2007, moved into military law enforcement. While a military police officer, Deputy Duran received additional training through the Army Special Reaction Team. He received an honorable discharge. And so this is all terrible news for him because he has a ton of training experience. The military trains their police better than civilian law enforcement. And he has all this training and he shoots this guy when the guy didn't pose a threat to him. Having a gun does not necessarily make you pose a threat, especially when you're in states that avail its citizens of the Second Amendment. Let's keep going. After serving in the United States Army, Deputy Duran started his civilian law enforcement career in Oklahoma, where he worked as a police officer and a canine officer from 2015 through 2019. For a period in 2016 through early 2017, Deputy Duran was fire marshal for the Atlas Fire Department. This guy's dedicating his life to serving his community. But he's at that crossword like we talked about. We go left, you go right. And sometimes, regardless of how good you live your life, if you make the wrong choice, you got to pay for it. Even good people have to pay for making bad choices. During 2019, before moving to Florida, beginning his career at Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office, Duran accepted a position as a sergeant for the Civilian Law Enforcement Police Department in Atlas Air Force Base. During Deputy Duran first began his career in 2019, he was left in 2021 to follow his spouse, who had a career opportunity outside of Florida. His spouse's career returned them to Florida, where in 2023, Duran rejoined the OCSO. When Deputy Duran first returned to Florida, he accepted a position with the Department of Children and Families, DCF. The schedule facilitated his completion of his undergraduate degree. Deputy Duran left DCF in good standing and returned to OCSO. In May 3rd, these guys move around, but I hope their pensions move with them. On May 3rd, 2024, Deputy Duran was dispatched to a call. Let's go to the meat of it. I really want to get to the meat of it. I'm sorry. We don't need to walk through everything. All right. All right, there we go. Let's get down to it. All right, because I just read something that what I was talking about, what I told you guys about. I asked Deputy Duran why he chose not to wait for a second deputy. When I tell y'all about domestic violence calls, that you have to go with two people, no matter whether you work with partners or whether you're in solo cars. Every department's policy in America is that you go to domestic violence calls with two officers. And I challenge my viewers, if there's any cops who are watching the show, to tell me if their department does different. So let's listen. I asked Deputy Duran why he chose not to wait for a second officer. He answered, so when I was gathering all the information and from what I was being told and what I knew at the specific time, it had begun as a verbal altercation, which then had escalated into a physical altercation. And so my thought process was, if I don't intervene, I didn't want the, event to escalate into something that could be even, more of a violent crime. Not a good enough answer, because there was no actionable information that would have warranted you not getting a second officer for your own personal safety. What would have warranted him to go is if he was told there's a weapon in play, or I saw somebody getting stabbed. I heard somebody say, please don't kill me. That's what would escalate it, that you can now use Deputy Duran's thought process and go without a second officer. So let's keep going. I asked Deputy Duran if he had received training that taught directed threat principle. He said he had. I asked him to explain directed threat as he understood it. He explained, directed threat to me entails when you are aware of a violent crime taking place, that is our responsibility to go forward without, hesitation and ensuring that the threat is either eliminated or, stopped. I asked Deputy Duran if he understood why law enforcement teaches directed threat instead of waiting for more law enforcement officers. He answered, hesitation can lead to more violent offenses, and the whole purpose is to stop the violent offenses. Now, I don't know what they're doing over there, but every law enforcement has this principle for active shooters. For active shooters. Every law enforcement has this for active shooters. I don't know if they're telling these people to just run into any situation. But anyway, let's keep going. I asked Eddie Duran what he was thinking while he was walking down the breezeway toward apartment 14-1. He said, so initially I was walking down the hallway as I deal with a lot of calls for and law enforcement calls is immediately start looking for avenues of approach. I look for areas for, effective cover. I kind of take the environment as far as if something were to take place, something violent or something emergency situation, what are my avenues of escape? Deputy Duran described the Sarah Breezeway as being let's skip over that. Come on. Can't read everything. I asked Deputy Duran if he heard signs of disturbance as he was walking down the breezeway. He answered, no, sir. When Deputy Duran arrived at the door to 14-1, he listens, starts to knock, then stops and listens again. I asked him if he heard anything during the time. He said, just to verify, I wasn't hearing anything or did hear anything. I wanted to ensure that if there was a disturbance or a scuffle going on, I could possibly identify it. Deputy Duran said he had not heard anything from the apartment at the time. I asked Deputy Duran to describe his thoughts at the time on his position on the breezeway in relation to the position of the door. Deputy Duran described, so initially when I was standing on the corner, it was taking an optimal positioning on the door frame, kind of out of view of the door. No, not out of the view of the door. However, just again, a protected covering issuing the door frame as a form of cover to prevent, should there be any sort of gunshot violence or coming through the door frame, it wouldn't hit me directly. So as I'm standing in the corner, I realize right behind me after I knock is the short railing. And then, of course, right next to me is the wall. So what I do is I made the decision, well, I'm not exactly in a great position. Should the person come out and choose to come at me physically, so I moved to the opposite side of the door. That's what he said, okay? I asked Deputy Duran why he chose to move to the door outside of the door frame, choose to move to the outside of the door after his first knock. He explained, so once I backed into the railing and I'm looking around, so felt railing behind me. Of course, I didn't know there's a drop. I look to the right and there's a wall for, preventing me to go anywhere. So I think to myself, okay, what if he comes out and by chance there's something that takes place? I don't want to go over the railing. So I move back to the other side of the wall, the opposite side. And again, I sit and wait and then listen some. I asked everyone why he chose to not stand in front of the door. He replied, I've been trained to be cognizant of where the doorway is. Should an assailant, whoever it is, decides they want to shoot through the door, of course, the door is going to stop a bullet coming through. There's a possibility of danger standing in the doorway. So I've been trying to move to the off to the side. I don't know. It's giving me a headache reading this guy's statement. No disrespect to him. He's under a lot of pressure. He's getting interviewed, but it's just a headache. I asked Deputy Duran why he did not announce himself when he knocked on the door. The first time he said initially, what I'll do is I'll knock on the door, kind of listen for a response. Generally, it's who's there? Who is it? What do you want? Get away from the door or any whatever response. So I'll knock again. I guess you could say normal, typical knock. See what the response is going to be. I kind of will gauge it. The person sounding aggressive. He's thinking too much, man. Like this, just like, it's like a battle plan just to knock on a door. It's like really weird. Anyway, let's go. I asked Deputy Duran if he ever heard anything from the inside of the apartment before the door opened. He said yes and explained, I can hear somewhat of a muffled voice. I replayed Deputy Duran's body-worn camera after the first knock. Before the second knock, I asked him, what could you hear clearly? He said, the only thing that I could hear was something to reference in police that was about the extent of it. I clarified, okay, so what do you think you hear the word police? He corrected me, something to the effect of police. I asked him if he understood what the rest of the sentence said. I can make out the rest of the sentence. No, sir. All right. You guys can go and read this shit. It's like it's deep. All right, so here we go. I asked Eddie Duran what he said to Mr. Fortson when he opened the door. He answered, "Step back." I asked him why he said step back, and he explained. So as soon as the door opens, I see the individual open the door, and as he's moving in, I tell him step back. And then as he's opening the door, he's starting to move forward. I asked Deputy Duran what Forceman did in response to his command to step back, and Duran said he's making a slight step forward with his left leg. I asked if Mr. Fortson was complying with Duran. He said, "No, sir." I asked Deputy Duran if he saw Mr. Fortson's firearm. He answered, "It was step back gun." Deputy Duran elaborated. As soon as the door initially opened, I see him moving forward. I tell him step back. As I'm telling him step back, I'm looking at his eyes, and I immediately look at his hand. This is interesting because I read this in the article, what he said here. And I think this is what sealed his fate, because he played the game that a lot of law enforcement officers play when they're trying to justify an unjustified shooting. And believe me, this is rare that this happens, because most shootings are justified. Absolutely most law enforcement shootings are justified. But sometimes in the ones that are not justified, they'll make it seem like the person had murderous intent, when all evidence shows there's no murderous intent on the side of the victim. So listen to what he says about Fortson to justify his actions. He says, "I'm looking at his eyes, and then I immediately look at his hand, which is what I've been trained to do. Look at his eyes. Tell me a lot about a person's intent. And look at his hands. Obviously, tell me if they're empty, open-handed, balled up, have a gun, weapon, knife, whatever it is." So I'm taking all of this in. I see him step forward. I see his eyes. I look down. I see his hands. And of course, that's what I see, the gun. I asked Deputy Duran about his impression when he looked at Mr. Fortson. He said, "When I saw his eyes, I saw aggression." You know what? I want to see if I see aggression in his eyes. Maybe he did see aggression. Let's pull it up. Roger Fortson video. Maybe he saw aggression. I don't know. I want to see. Now, we're going to go back. I'm going to pull it up. See if we see aggression in Fortson's eyes. Let's see if we can even see his eyes. This one doesn't have it. This one's heavily redacted. Heavily redacted, and YouTube still has restricted the video. Ridiculous. Well, I don't think we'll be able to see his eyes, because I think the hand is in the way. So what we do see, I'm just going to bring this over here real quick so you guys can take a quick gander of this. What we do see is we see his hand extended. Like, hold on. Whoa. Relax. You got a gun pointed at me. Relax. That's what we see. We can't see his eyes. Unfortunately, his hands are up, and we can't see his eyes. But what we do see is his hands up. Like, hey, relax. We see Mr. Fortson trying to de-escalate. Now, in the view that I'm reading this report, I can't see your comments. So I just want to run to the comments real quick and show some love. Lucifer the Doberman says, first of all, you got his member for 16 months badge, and we appreciate you, Lucifer. Thank you so much for being a supporter of the show for so long. And he says, send some love for my dad's 80th birthday. Big shout out to Grandpa, 80 years on this earth. Big shout out to you, Grandpa. Happy 80th birthday, Lucifer the Doberman, to you and your family. Celebrate, show Grandpa some love. It's beautiful. All right. Regular Decker says, wow, of course, I believe all women, right? It's so bad. Chris Dry says, neighbors are a pain in the butt. I think a lot of the world problems is the lack of space. I agree. Let's keep going. All right. So let's get back to this. Let's deep dive into this bad boy. So, so he said, I asked Epi about his impression. He said, I saw aggression. I saw, obviously, again, interacting with individuals in these type of situations, you're dealing with people who are not likely and during the worst time of their life at the particular moment. So I see aggression, anger. He lied. We didn't see that. But the body language that I just showed you is not indicative of aggression. This is not indicative of somebody who's being aggressive. It's not indicative of somebody. That hand right there, what I've been seeing his face, his hand right here, his left hand is the total opposite of aggression when it comes to human body language. You got Gutter's Pub in the building. What's happening? Hope you're doing well, Gutter. Hope the show is good too. All right, let's keep going. All right, let's get this out here. Oh, let me go back because a command was given. Let's see here. I asked if he encountered resistance. Oh, so I skipped something. Sorry. I asked him to explain what made him believe he saw aggression. He explained, when I looked at him and he made eye contact or I made contact with him, it was a stare that was fixated 100% on me. Maybe because you had a gun pointed at him. Which as I'm looking at him, it wasn't eyebrows raised, hey, what's going on, inquisitive, why are you here? It was a stare, not so much like I said inquisitive look. So that showed me there was aggression. That showed me there was obviously a little bit of discontent for me knocking on the door. I asked Eddie Duran what he thought when he saw Mr. Forson's forearm. He said, so initially when I see the forearm of the elbow, his hands and his elbows are slightly canted, meaning not straight down. It is a manner so that his arm is slightly up. Okay. So what I see, when I see the gun, I immediately see the grip, and he was on it, which is standard pistol grip. So I see the back part of the sights, part of the course, dovetail sights on a specific gun, have a white U-shaped line on the back of the gun, Glock. So then I see that, and I see immediately that there's a red or optic, like a red dot, kind of how we have on our guns mounted to the top of the gun, top side of the gun. I asked Eddie Duran what he did next. He answered, so then immediately at that point, once I've gauged from what I can understand his intent, what I can understand as far as him knowing that I was already there, from what I know that I'm telling him to step back and there was a slight step forward, immediately I thought, I'm stuck in this area and I'm about to get shot. You notice as soon as the investigator starts questioning him on the actual shooting, he starts to sound discombobulated. He just starts to everything else, he's looking at me with aggression and his hands are canted and, he's using all these big SAT words and, all these like high law enforcement, words. Like he's just like going in like, the back strap of the gun, and the U-shaped white, the Glock, blah, 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 all that extra shit. And as soon as the investigator's like, why'd you shoot him? Let's keep going. I asked Deputy Duran if he considered moving offline out of the way. Deputy Duran again explained the limitations presented by his positioning on a breezeway, which in his mind made moving impractical. I asked Deputy Duran if he considered telling Mr. Forson to drop the gun or issue other commands. He answered, based on everything that I've had taken into account, I felt 100% that action was going to be my best course as opposed to reaction. Based on how close we were, the proximity, obviously there was maybe 3 to 4 feet of reactionary gap, whereas a typical reactionary gap going to be between 6 to 8. Immediately felt that I was at a disadvantage considering he had his gun readily available for us. Now, mind you, remember when the deputy opened the door, his gun was holstered. And this young man had his gun to his side the whole time. So the deputy was able to unholster his weapon, present his weapon, aim at Fortson, and at no time did Fortson ever raise his gun. The only thing he raised was his hand, like this. the hand without a weapon, he raised it like this. So it's like, what's happening here? Where's the disconnect? Where is the disconnect that we seem to have? Because he had time to take his gun out, fire it, aim it, and fire it at Fortson, and at no time did Fortson raise that weapon. I asked Deputy Duran if he considered telling Mr. Fortson to drop the gun or issue commands. He said immediately felt that I was at a disadvantage, and mine was still holstered. So at that point, again, action was going to be better than reaction to prevent any kind of great bodily harm or death to myself. I asked Deputy Duran if he encountered resistance from Mr. Fortson. He initially answered was no. Deputy Duran then clarified, I'm sorry, sir. Can you clarify resistance? I was not given time to clarify. Deputy Duran continued, because as far as giving him command to step back, him moving forward would be considered resistance. Now, if you're referring like a physical resistance, then no. I clarified any kind of resistance, Deputy Duran continued. So yes, then it would have just been him moving forward. I asked if there was any resistance other than Mr. Fortson taking a slight step forward after being commanded to step back. Deputy Duran said no. He's going to go to jail, guys. I asked Deputy Duran how many times he thought he shot. He said about 5 times. Then he shot him an excessive amount of times. Should have shot him twice and then assessed and then shot again. He shot him 1,000,000 times before he finally, stopped shooting. And that is a thing. All right. You each time an officer shoots, he has to assess after 2 or 3 shots. Is what we're usually taught. The only time you mag dump is if the person continues to wield the weapon. From what we heard and what we saw, as soon as he shot the kid, the gun was dropped and he was separated from the weapon. He's still firing. But let's keep going. That's up to debate. We'll have to figure that out with the criminal investigation. I asked him if he remembered bringing his left hand towards his chest right after he stopped firing, and he said he was reaching for his radio to call out for help. Mr. Fortson told the deputy, I asked Deputy Duran if he gave commands to Mr. Fortson to drop the gun. Once Mr. Fortson was lying on the ground, Deputy Duran said that he could not see Mr. Fortson's hand, nor could he see the gun. Mr. Fortson had told Deputy Duran, it's over there. Deputy Duran told Mr. Fortson a 3rd time to drop the gun. I asked Deputy Duran why he said it a 3rd time. He explained, he responded, but I couldn't hear anything. It was just, I really couldn't understand, which is why I gave him the 2nd and the 3rd command and dropped the gun. So then he said, I don't have it, or it's over there. One of those two. And then at that point, I didn't see his hand, so I knew that there was no longer a gun. Roughly 16 seconds after the first shot, Deputy Duran called for EMS. I asked him what was he thinking then. He said, right at that point, I'm thinking, I don't know what else is in the home. I don't know. And this is the thing, right? I would say this. When this deputy took his time to go in there and actually assist Fortson, I don't fault him for that. That's actually proper tactics. He was by himself. It's another reason why he shouldn't have been by himself. There could have been other people in the home. He needed to clear the house before he could go in and help Fortson. You can't clear a house by yourself. So he had to wait for backup to come for him to now clear the house, to then be able to say the house is clear before he can now give Fortson help. And a lot of people kind of misconstruing that and saying, well, didn't Ridley go and help Fortson? He did not, but he wasn't supposed to. All right. I think we kind of got the gist of this, man. Let me see if there's anything substantive here that I might want to read out to you guys. So when he got out of the apartment, he's banging the wall like fuck and all that stuff. The deputy, after he killed the dude. Oh, okay. So I think this is with the girlfriend. So let's read this one. I conducted a sworn interview with blank via Zoom. Miss LaShonda, counsel Rogers, was present. Attorney. The interview was recorded. Called my office after the Zoom meeting had ended to add to her interview. The phone call was recorded on body-worn camera. The pertinent information is as follows. Blank identifier was verified through her Alabama driver's license. Blank was a FaceTime call Mr. Fortson during the time leading up to and through the physical disturbance call received by OCSO. Blank denied she and Mr. Fortson had been engaged in an argument. I asked her about 2 specific statements the witness said she heard Mr. Fortson make. She said, denied hearing Mr. Fortson say the statements or anything further. Those statements was, you're a fucking liar. Why are you always lying? That's what the alleged Air Force lady who's next door to Fortson, who made the call and made all these outlandish allegations of children living next door and little baby footsteps saying mommy, mommy, and arguing through her vents and all that stuff. That's the lady that, and mind you, her apartment, there's a passageway and a staircase between her apartment and Fortson's apartment. So I don't even know how they're connected by vents, which is really weird. But I don't know the layout of that place. I'm going to tell you what I saw on body worn camera. So it's pretty weird. Fortson was kind of in his own area, on his own corner. So I don't know how this other lady could hear these things, but whatever. Bottom line is the girlfriend denies it. So let's keep going. She denied Mr. Fortsman had been engaged in an argument. I asked her about two specific statements. We already covered that. She said no. Blank said Mr. Fortsman was in his living room playing a video game when the first knock occurred. She described what happened after the first knock at the door by Deputy Duran. He then hears the knock at the door. When he hears the knock at the door, he asks, "Who is it?" And he didn't get a response. And he told me, "I don't know who that could be because nobody comes up to my house." Blank and Mr. Fortson discussed. Neither of them knew who could have been knocking at his door. He told her he was going to answer the door. I asked Blank if after the first knock, Mr. Fortson asked who it is, and before the second knock, if Mr. Fortson said anything similar to the words fuck and or police. She answered no. She said after the second knock, Mr. Fortson went to the front door to look through the peephole, and she said he did not see anyone. This is what I'm telling you, folks. That's why it was not smart for him to blade the door where he was 5 feet away from the actual door. Blading the door means you stand perpendicular to the door jamb, but you still can be seen by the person looking through the peephole so that they can see that you're a police officer. But if they want to shoot through the door, it's very difficult to try and shoot through the door and hit you. You basically stand to the side of the door, but you can still be seen. You just don't stand right in front of the door like I'm standing in front of the camera or sitting in front of the camera right now. You're to the side of the door. So this is a door. You're standing like right here. The person can still see you, but you're not standing right in front of the door. So she's saying, take it for whatever you believe, because I think everybody in the story kind of spins it their own way. But she's saying that he looked through the peephole, he didn't see anybody. Now think about how weird that'd be for you. If you're in your house, you hear a knock on your door, you say, "Who is it?" Nobody answers. You go look through the peephole, you don't see anybody. Then somebody says police. Especially in this time where people are constantly robbing people and doing home invasions. No, it's too suspicious, but let's keep going. And he told me, and he didn't get a response. Then he told me, "I don't know who that is, blah, 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 blah." Let's go down here. I asked if it was, okay, so this is where we're at. She said after the second knock, Ms. Fortson went to the front door to look through the peephole, and he said he did not see anyone. He then returned to the living room. Let's go to the next page. I asked Blank if either she or Mr. Fortson heard sheriff's office open the door. She said neither of them heard that. Mr. Fortson was in the living room when the third knock occurred. I asked if either she or Mr. Fortson heard the sheriff's office open the door. After the third knock, she answered no, but the knock gets aggressive. It gets louder, like they're banging on the door at this point. Blank explained Mr. Fortson's action after the third knock. Then he puts the Blank phone down and says, "I'm going to grab my gun because I don't know who that is." And Blank said she kept his firearm in his bedroom. Now, it sounded pretty loud to us when we're hearing him say Orange County Sheriff's Department, but what she's saying kind of makes sense and explains why he would go get a gun, because maybe he did not hear that there was police at the door. Now, unless we're in his home and we know how thick his door is, how good the insulation is in that building, we don't know none of that stuff. Where the living room is in relation to the door, we don't know. So she could be lying. She could just be saying it from her perspective, which is this is her truth. Or she could be saying the ultimate truth, which is that Fortson did not hear the police officers say Sheriff's Department. But it kind of makes sense that he did not hear Sheriff's Department because he went and he got his gun because he didn't know who was at the door. It kind of makes sense. Blank explained Mr. Fortsman's actions after the third knock. All right, let's keep going. I asked Blank if she saw Mr. Fortsman was firearm. She said no. I asked Blank if she had initially thought the sound of gunshots were Instead, the sounds of law enforcement busting through the Mr. Forsman's door. She answered yes. I asked if she had told police law enforcement had busted through Mr. Forsman's door. She answered yes. I asked her if she later learned / realized law enforcement had not busted through Mr. Forsman's door, and she said correct. Shortly after Zoom interview ended, Blank called my office to add information to her interview. She said, so the third knock, whoever the knock was aggressive, Mr. Forsman did say, who the F is it really loud? He said that really loud before he opened the door. I clarified that what was said before the third knock and not the second knock. And she said, no, not before the second knock. No, this is like the very, very end before he opens the door. Black interviews the Zoom interview and subsequent phone interview were of Deputy Duran's interview and therefore unavailable prior to Duran's interview. I provided Duran and Mr. Whitaker with the interviews and asked if they had anything they wished to add. Mr. Whitaker responded in his email. They said they had reviewed the interviews and did not wish to provide additional statement. All right, that's very interesting. All right, so now that's pretty much it. So now they got to go into their what reasonableness is and all that stuff. It says, although Florida statute gives a wide range to the use of force, Orange County Sheriff deputies are authorized to use only the amount of force that is objectively reasonable to perform their duties. Objective reasonableness is the standard by which a deputy's use of force will be evaluated by asking whether the deputy's actions are objectively reasonable in light of the facts and circumstances surrounding him or her without regard to his or her underlying intent or motivations. Graham versus Connor. All right, so now let's go to the conclusion. All right, we're almost at the end of it, guys. Deputy Eddie Duran was dispatched to a physical disturbance in progress. He was dispatched to the address. He was instructed to meet the leasing agent who had called OCSO non-emergency line to report the disturbance in 14-1 on behalf of the blank neighborhood who resides in apartment blank. Deputy Duran met in the parking lot. Let's kind of skip over to some. When Deputy Duran approached the door, 14-1, he listened for sounds of a disturbance. He did not hear any. He then knocked on the door and chose not to announce his presence. He was listening for a response. After the first knock, Deputy Duran said he heard something in effect of the fucking police. Deputy Duran did not say that with certainty, but rather on multiple occasions during the interview qualified what he heard with the phrase something to the effect of, despite not knowing with certainty what he heard, Deputy Duran said that he was certain Mr. Forson knew he was law enforcement. As Deputy Duran had not yet announced Sheriff's Office, I asked how Mr. Forson knew he was law enforcement. Deputy Duran did not know. Mr. Forson did not have any cameras that could have given him a view of who was outside his door. Roughly 8 seconds after the first knock and before Deputy Duran heard Mr. Forson, Deputy Duran crossed in front of the door and his peephole. Deputy Duran did not at any time cover the peephole. Deputy Duran even knocked on the door a second time and announced Sheriff's Office, open the door. He knocked on the door a third time and announced Sheriff's Office, open the door. Mr. Forson opened the door and Deputy Duran thought Mr. Forson was moving forward, which caused Deputy Duran's command step back. Deputy Duran said Mr. Forson then took another slight step forward. This was the only resistance Deputy Duran said he encountered from Mr. Forson. Deputy Duran also described Mr. Forson as having a discontented, non-inquisitive stare. Okay. Deputy Duran said Mr. Forson firearm as Duran finished stepping back. He said Mr. Forson's elbow was slightly canted. All right, let's keep going. I want to skip through all of this. Fella's going to be shot. Now, the objective fact presented to Duran were the following. He was dispatched to an in-progress physical disturbance in the apartment. He received secondhand information from the leasing agent about the current incident, and she relayed an incident from weeks prior that happened in the area of the apartment he was responding to. He listened for sounds of the disturbance in the apartment door and did not hear any. He knocked without announcing his presence and listens for a response. 4 times, when Deputy Duran qualified what he believed Mr. Forson said before saying something to the effect of, when he's describing what he heard, Deputy Duran said something to the effect of, it's the fucking police. He knocked 2 more times and announced his presence both of those times. When the door opened, Deputy Duran said Mr. Forson was heading toward him, blah, blah, blah. We'll just kind of go over what we just read, so let's keep going. Okaloosa County Sheriff's Order 401 Response to resistance, section 4.2D states, deadly force resistance is a subject's hostile attacking movements with or without a weapon that create a reasonable perception by the officer that the subject intends to cause and has the capability of causing death or great bodily harm to the officer or others. The objective facts, as discovered in this administrative investigation, do not show Mr. Fortson made hostile attacking movements, and therefore the objective facts do not support the use of deadly force as appropriate response to Mr. Fortson's action. Deputy Eddie Duran's use of deadly force was not objectively reasonable. Let's go. That's it. Deputy Duran, the facts as evidence show Deputy Duran's use of deadly force against Mr. Roger Fortson was not objectively reasonable, and excessive use of force resistance is sustained. All right, so that's the end of that. I just want to read this last part that I skipped over. He described seeing aggressive anger in Mr. Fortson's eyes. Deputy Duran further described Mr. Fortson as having a discontented, non-inquisitive stare. Deputy Duran saw Mr. Fortson had a firearm in his hand with his Fortson's elbow slightly canted. He described the firearm as not pointing at him. The firearm was pointed at the ground sufficient enough for Deputy Duran to have clearly seen the rear face of the rear sight, and let's add to also have clearly been able to have the time to draw his own weapon and then shoot this young man. All right, that was long. That was long. It was detailed. I appreciate you guys who were able to sit through it with me. Let me play this one last thing for you. This is gonna be the FaceTime that the girlfriend took. I think at some point she started recording it on her end. And so let's listen and let's watch and let's see what happens.
Come back, come back! Let me breathe. Do not move, stop moving. Stop moving. Hang on, man. We got EMS coming for you. Don't move. You got move. We're good. We're good. You got a gun since you opened that door. I haven't even gone inside the building yet. Let's go. Sheriff's office, somebody else, make the pressure stop. Watch the door around, go left. On the ground, on the ground. Yeah. Going over and pushing? Go ahead. Go. Yep. Sheriff's office, make the pressure stop. Go. Move up. Sheriff, put it right here. Sheriff's office, open the door. Pull up. Go ahead. I'm coming from Sheriff's office. Sheriff, open the door. Move. Clear. You got any trauma? I got some trauma kids. Nope. You got which? Yeah, we got it. Alright. Hey, I got one of the carpets. They're gonna plug wool. Yeah, mine's out there by the deal. Go get the trauma kit, please. I have one in my vest. Get out there. I got it over there. Chest. You did one right here. You started moving it out. Yes, that counts. Hey, Florida. Echo 14 on one. Roll, shoot tricks. Alright, go. Few other trauma kids. Hey man, stay with us. Rolling towards you. No, got it. No. You got an exit wound. Exit wound in the back. Okay, one. Got it. One, two. One, try to get up. Two in. Shoulder side. Roll ready. 3 on the arm. Roll. Watch that.
Yeah, we wasted it.
No exit. So related dispatch, you got 3 gunshot wounds, 1 exit. Maybe more, man. He's shot up. 4 up. We have 3 gunshot wounds in the chest, 1 exit wound. Count 6. Okay, you got that 6 gunshot wounds.
He wasted this kid. He really did. 3 gunshot wounds to the chest. Even if he would have shot him in a hospital, they probably couldn't save him. He literally wasted this kid. It's terrible.
Just keep going. Who's that from? Give me a measure. Hold on. Let me look at my bag. I'll have we got nothing. Here, we got. Get that's fine. We'll just see if you can get any other stuff. Just should be sitting there. Nothing. Pressure on that side will work, yes. You got it, man. It's gonna hurt, man. I know. Alright. You want to keep breathing. I got my pocket. I got some of this. Got it. Hold this. There's more directions in there. Get them out. You got high pressure. Look to this side. And no problem. There we go. Okay, I can't hold pressure. I got you. I got it. Okay, hold it for a second. Pressure.
That's real sad. Like when, you know, as a girlfriend who, you know, she's recording this like last moment of this young man, dying. Like I said, man, you know, I don't play the racial stuff unless I have proof of it. And if through the course of their investigation, you know, they do a search warrant on Deputy Eddie Duran's house and they find white supremacist paraphernalia and all that nonsense and you know, Facebook posts of he saying he wants to kill black people. Unless I see something like that, this is not about race. What it's about is terrible training and bad judgment. And this guy, he had terrible training and bad judgment. For him to believe that in a state where you can literally pull a gun out on somebody in the street and shoot them if they pose a threat to you, and it's called stand your ground castle doctrine and stand your ground laws. Not castle doctrine, it's in your home, but that's a part of the stand your ground laws. And in a state where we just covered a biker justifiably, so I'm not using him like he did something wrong, but a biker shooting a fake pregnant lady, because we proved on this channel that the lady was not pregnant. The autopsy showed that when her mother said she was 5 months pregnant, the mother was lying. But the news story at the time was pregnant librarian killed by biker, right? The lady hit the biker's bike. He followed her home because he's trying to call the cops to do a police report, and she leaving the scene of an accident. She goes in her house on her property. She comes out with a gun. He pulls out his gun and he shoots her. That was justified. This is Florida, ladies and gentlemen. You have the right to come to have your guns to protect yourself. The fact that this guy killed this innocent man, he's got to pay. I feel bad for him because I think he came to work acting in good faith. He came to work wanting to help people. I believe that. I don't have any evidence to say that Deputy Duran is a bad person, is a bad family man, is a racist, is a profiler, any of those things. I have no proof of these things. What I do have proof of is that he unjustifiably shot this young man. He had enough time to see the gun, pull out his service weapon, point the gun, give commands to step back and all that stuff, and then shoot the young man 5 times. Three of which went into his chest. He had all that time. He had time to say, drop the gun. He had time to say that. He didn't do it. If your gun is already pointed up, you got the upper hand. He had a choice. He had a choice, and he made the wrong choice. He had a choice to do a thorough investigation. He chose not to. In his mind's eye, once again, I don't believe, there's no evidence for me to believe that he didn't speak to the complainant because he was feeling lazy and didn't want to do any work. There's no evidence to support that. Poor training. Poor training. Because if he would have spoke to the unnamed neighbor, he would have realized that lady is batshit crazy. he would have realized she was nuts. Just like when we're reading her statement in the report, we clearly see she's nuts. She has footsteps and, oh, there was an altercation, there was an assault, and well, what made you think? I heard footsteps. Tons and tons of footsteps. Oh, a kid lived there. How do you know a kid lived there? Oh, because I heard the little footsteps and I hear mommy, mommy, mommy. Well, he only lived with a dog. He lived with a dog. Oh, well, I ain't see no dog. How do you not see a dog if you're a next door neighbor when a person has to walk the dog 3 times a day? You only get a dog if you want exercise. You don't get a dog if you don't want exercise. She's hearing arguments and conversations through the vents. She heard a one-sided conversation and assumed there's 2 people there and assumed that they're being aggressive with each other because they have footsteps all over the place. And it sounds like she's dragging her feet on the ground. The imaginary female is there. She's dragging her feet on the ground. It's like, why is she dragging her feet on the ground? And why are they sliding tables? She's losing her mind. She's crazy. She's crazy. Either that or she's on drugs. Does the military drug test people with just as random, or is it only with cause? Because she could, I don't know if she's high on drugs. I don't know if she's mentally ill. But if he'd have went and spoke to her, he would have known that she is batshit crazy. And there's been times that I've gone on calls and I'm speaking to the complainant and they're batshit crazy, and I go listen to the door and I don't hear anything and I leave. I'm like, yo, there's nothing here. I'm not, just because you can doesn't mean you should bother the citizenry. If I don't feel like there's any cause with what you're saying to give me that reasonable belief that I should even ask another party a question, I'm not going to do it. Because I feel like you should only get police contact if there's a reason to give you police contact, not just because we can. If he would have only spoken to the complainant, like Strategic told you he should have, we would not have been here. If he'd have knocked on the door, stood in front of the door in a tactical manner, announced himself as a police officer as soon as he knocked on the door, we would not be here. The girlfriend clearly said that the young man said, "Who is it?" Heard nothing, looked through the peephole, saw nothing, and then told his girlfriend, "I don't know who's out there. I'm going to get my gun." And whether she's lying about whether she heard the police officer say police or not, the first 2 instances is enough for any reasonable person to be concerned that the person outside of the door is not really a police officer. Knock, knock, knock. Who is it? Silence. Knock, knock, knock. I look through the peephole. I see nothing. Knock, knock, knock. Police. Open the door. Knock, knock, knock. Police. Open the door. You sitting there like, how do I know that's really police? The first time I asked who it was, nobody answered. The second time I looked through the peephole, I didn't see anybody. Now, 3rd and 4th time they're saying police. I don't believe it. Let me go get my gun and make sure everything is cool. Make sure I'm not going to be a victim of a home invasion. It's reasonable for Roger Fortson to think those things and to answer his door with a gun. It's unreasonable for a police officer to shoot a law-abiding citizen who's availing himself of his Second Amendment right. It's unreasonable. Unreasonable. Absolutely unreasonable. So I'll say it once and I'll say it again, and this is the last time, and I'm going to get the hell out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, Strategic has made a prediction. Roger Fortson, his killer, Eddie Duran, is going to be charged with manslaughter. I'm telling you that right now. He's going to be charged with manslaughter. I want to go ahead and play this for you guys. We're going to go to another topic real quick, and then we'll get the hell out of here. But this is breaking news, and I want to go ahead and play this for you guys. Let me go ahead. It's on my phone. 2 officers shot in Queens, New York by Migrant. 2 NYPD officers have been shot by a migrant. I don't know if these officers are alive or dead. I hope that they are alive. Please, Lord Jesus Christ. Please, Lord Jesus Christ, make sure that you put your blessings and your grace on these officers. Please, Lord Jesus Christ, don't let these officers be dead. Let me pause this. Let me bring you guys in on this one. See what the hell is going on.
Hazel, good morning. And all morning we've been watching police work here along 23rd Avenue, part of a very large crime scene going up and down this stretch here, focused on finding clues. And this hour, new details to share from their investigation and about that suspect. First, a look at the gun. Police say 19-year-old suspect Bernardo Raul Castro Mata used to open fire on 2 NYPD officers overnight. Authorities saying he carried that firearm illegally and that it's now in evidence. And even more evidence found at the crime scene. Here's a look at the moped. Authorities say those 2 officers first noticed that suspect riding overnight and also spotted several evidence markers near where those shots were.
Now, I'm going to stop it here because I think these officers are alive. I think they're alive. They're going to be fine. I believe so, just how this guy's talking. Because if they were dead, they would already said these officers were no longer with us. So thank God these officers are alive. But I got to tell you guys this. And yeah, it's a high point. Very cheap gun. Cheap bullshit use and throw gun, a high point. This is what's happening in New York, ladies and gentlemen. This is what's happening. These migrants are fucking going crazy in New York. And everything that's described in this story so far is what New York City residents have to deal with. Migrants on mopeds with guns running around robbing people. They have turned New York into Caracas. Roving robbers on motorcycles. If you go on YouTube and you search gunpoint robberies in South America, the modus operandi is people getting on mopeds and robbing people on mopeds and motorcycles. That's how they do down in South America. Now they're doing that in America. They're doing that in America. These are people that do not qualify for asylum. I'm going to say it now. I'm saying it again because what I'm saying is facts to you. To all the people who are listening to this, I am telling you facts. I'm not telling you facts from a Democratic perspective, a Republican perspective, a liberal perspective, a conservative perspective, a racist perspective, a xenophobic perspective. I'm telling you as a factual basis what asylum is, and coming to America because you need a job is not facts. I'm so riled up. I'm sorry. It's not asylum. Coming to America because you need a job is not asylum. Sure, there are good people amongst this population who just want a better life. I get it. America will probably be better with you. You'll probably open up a small business. Your kids will end up being doctors and lawyers. You may live the American dream, but you're not here legally. And when you tell that immigration officer that you're here to claim asylum, you're lying. So you are a good person who's committing a sin and a fraud because you're not telling the truth. Because economic immigration is not asylum. And now we have all these military-aged young men from Latin America. Many of them can't read or write in Spanish, much less English. Let's say that again. They're here. They're in their 19s and their 20s. They did not go to school in Caracas. They don't know how to read or write in Spanish, much less English. And now we have to deal with these folks. And because they're in immigration limbo, they can't even work. They can't get jobs. What are they going to do? They're going to do the same thing Americans who don't have educations and don't have jobs do. They're going to engage in crime. The problem is when an American do it, that's our problem. But when somebody who's not supposed to be here does it, is it our problem? Should it be our problem? No, send them back. Let's keep going.
Fired this morning. The NYPD commissioner sharing even more about those tense moments.
They observed a male suspect drive a moped the wrong way on 82nd Street near 23rd Avenue and attempted to pull him over. The suspect then fled on foot, and the officers began a foot pursuit, which led for several blocks. During the pursuit, the suspect fired multiple rounds at our officers, who then returned fire.
Bullet hole. Because of this vest, a young police officer is going home.
Thank God.
Senseless act of violence.
Thank God.
A total disregard for life.
The mayor and police executives expressing relief. Those two officers are on track to recover from their injuries. Both officers and that suspect undergoing treatment now at local hospitals. And also, as we look here now at the scene, you can see those officers behind that crime tape really
Too bad those officers didn't send this scumbag back to Caracas in a box. But let's get
honed in on that area back there. They've been there throughout the morning, looking very closely at the ground to perhaps trying to not miss any more evidence they could find here at the scene. Police also saying that suspect Bernardo Raul Castro Mata currently resides at a migrant shelter not too far away from
for free at the taxpayer's expense. And yet he's shooting the same people. He's biting the hand that freaking feeds him.
From here, police also saying so far it does not appear that he has any arrest record in the city. However, they say he is someone they're looking into for several robberies around Queens. And we're live here in Queens. I'm Justin Finch. Back to you.
An interesting development. Justin, thank you. And we continue our team coverage this morning on the two officers shot.
That's right. Our Julie Millay now has the very latest from Elmhurst Hospital, where those officers are set to be released any moment now. Hi, Julie.
Hi there, Dan. We are expecting them to be released from this hospital any minute now. As you said, we are standing by. Now, NYPD telling us those officers have been with their families this morning, recovering, and that they are in good spirits. But they stressed this story could have had a very different ending. That one officer who was shot near his stomach was saved by his bulletproof vest. The other officer was shot in the leg. They are both expected to make a full recovery. They met here with the mayor this morning, who came as soon as he woke up this morning and heard this news. Now, officers have been stationed here at the hospital all night. They've been staying.
Send them back. Send them back.
Outside the trauma center here since we pulled up around 3:45 this morning. We've seen them there in their cars along the road here, staged outside this hospital. Now, the NYPD says the two officers who were shot are both young. One had 5 years on the job, and the other had a little more than 2 years on the job. Their colleagues say their bravery was on full display today, and that they both have.
We're paying for the migrant to eat. We're paying for him to house him. We're paying for him to have spending cash in his pocket. We're paying for his health care. We're paying for everything, this person's entire existence, right? Now we're also paying for the police officer's salary, paying for the police officer's equipment, paying for the cars, the guns, the bullets, the everything, right? Now we have to pay for the police officer's hospital bill, which we gladly do, of course. These are our heroes and all that good stuff. And the recovery. They're going to be out for a while on sick leave. They're probably going to get promotions for being shot in the line of duty. God bless them. They deserve every ounce of it. But then we're also paying for the perp to get patched up after he shot at cops and tried to kill our police officers. We got to pay for his top-notch Western medical bills. After that, we got to pay for his long-term recovery. Because remember, when we say wounded in America, we never talk about the long-term effects of that wounded. For all we know, this dude could be paralyzed. For all we know, he could be missing half his intestinal tract. We don't know what's going on with the perp, right? We have no idea, right? So we got to take care of his long-term recovery. Now we're going to put him in jail for like the next 15 and 20 years, 25 years. We got to pay for 3 square meals and a facility to house him in. We're paying for everything. Everything. Send them back.
Have bright futures ahead of them.
The one police officer shot in the vest was more concerned about his partner, saving his life, getting a tourniquet. That's what partners do in the NYPD. They save each other's lives, and that's what happened here today.
Now, the suspect in this shooting is also expected to survive his injuries. That 19-year-old is currently being treated at New York Presbyterian Queens Hospital, and police said that suspect is now being looked at several other robberies in Queens. That investigation is in its very early stages and ongoing. Again, we are standing by for the release of these two officers who were shot overnight, both expected to make a full recovery from those injuries. In Elmhurst, Queens, I'm Julie.
Thank you for your reporting, and wow, thank God bless those officers. Speedy recovery to those guys. We wish them the best, and to all of these people who are coming into our country, for those of them who are here lawfully, for those of them who are truly escaping persecution in their countries, and who are following the laws and the rules. I remember I was watching, I think it was Nick Shirley. He was doing interviews, and he spoke to one guy from Africa. And I'm not, trying to show love to this guy because he's black. He just made the statement. It's his statement that he made. And he said, listen, I'm here for a better life in Africa. It's crazy. There's a lot of violence. And right now, I applied for asylum and I'm waiting. I can't work. I can't do anything. But I'm just following all the rules of this land, all the laws, and just waiting until I get my turn and I can be able to get my papers and work. That's all we ask for. This African man who made that statement, he had the formula. Is it easy? No. People talk about these Venezuelans, they're like the biggest complainers, the Venezuelans. Not the Ecuadorians, not the all the different folks, the Peruvians and all of the Venezuelans are the biggest complainers. Not the Chinese, not the Africans, the Zimbabweans and the Sudanese. The Venezuelans are the complainers. Oh, the food is not good. The this is that. We can't work. We can't do all this extra stuff. These people are supposedly coming from the most hostile places in the world. At least that's what they're claiming on their documentation. There's no food for them to eat. They're all being raped. They're all being killed. They're all being genocide. Mind you, go to the countries, these things aren't happening. But yet, they're complaining about everything in America as though America is just as bad as the country they came from. So if that's the case, then go back to your country. This African guy said what all of us expect as Americans. You are guests here. You don't have legal status. You don't have your papers. Your asylums have not been granted. You are guests here for the time being. Follow the rules of our country. It's not going to be easy. The food is not going to be the great, but you're going to get fed. The housing is already better than what we give our citizens when they need shelter. So you should be grateful for that because we put them in hotels. Bide your time, wait your turn, and follow the rules and regulations of our country. It seems like quite a few of these folks can't seem to figure that out. Can't seem to figure that out. But anyway, I'm so happy that these officers were able to survive and they were able to incapacitate this suspect, and now he'll have to pay. I pray to God that nobody, whatever, I don't know, I won't go there. Anyway, you guys be well. Thanks a lot for coming through, showing love. We do have new t-shirts on the Strategic Eye Show. I looked on my channel, and the t-shirts have finally merged in the store. They are Trump t-shirts. If you want to support Trump, well, I'm not giving any money to Trump, but if you like Trump and you want to get a Trump t-shirt, go ahead and get it. I'm also going to do a Biden t-shirt. We're equal opportunists here, so we'll get a Biden t-shirt. It might not be anything positive on a Biden t-shirt because I don't like Biden, but the Trump t-shirt was kind of like, your reaction when you kind of figure out that Trump was better for this country than Biden. It's kind of like the irony I'm going through. As a person who my entire life have been a Democrat, and now I'm starting to realize that the Democratic Party has lost its way. It's a sham. It's not for the people. And the person that they're telling us is the most dangerous person for our country is turning out to be the best thing for our country, which is Trump. So it is what it is. Before I go, Chris says, what do you think about the trial? I think you're talking about the Trump trial. I think that if I was on that jury, I would have probably voted not guilty because their star witness was a convicted liar, fraudster, and a thief. I think that it was just all politics. I think everybody knows it's politics. You even are hearing MSNBC and CNN, they're all admitting it was about politics. I can't, there's an interesting conversation I had with somebody who was actually connected to this trial. I just can't talk about it because it would give up too much information and I don't want it to bite me in my butt. Just know I get around, all right? I'm nobody special. I'm nobody important, but I get around and I meet people and I have interesting conversations with people. And even that person, like if I said who it was, it would be news. Like people would probably try and reach out to me and put me on channels and stuff. But even that person told me it was political. It probably wouldn't be news because everybody already knows that. But even they told me it was political. And so this was political. It was political. And, people are going to do what they got to do. I'm voting for Trump. It is what it is. I'm going to vote for Trump. I'm not going to chicken out at the last moment. I'm not voting for Biden. I'm voting for Trump. Okay? If the Democrats get a new candidate at the last minute and that candidate is saying things that actually resonate with me, if they're saying, I want to solve immigration, I want to send back the people who are here illegally, taking advantage of our asylum program. I want to tamper down on inflation. I want to slow down some of this government spending. I want to fight corruption. If a Democrat is saying that, because I don't care about your political affiliation, if a Democrat is saying these things, then I might vote for them. But if it's Biden who's saying it, I don't believe Biden. So I won't vote for him, even if he says he wants to do these things, because he's a liar. So I'm not going to vote for him. And if the choice is between Trump and Biden, I'm going to vote for Trump. If the Democrats put forward somebody other than Biden, and they are saying the things that matter to me, which is the economy and immigration and inflation, then I'm going to vote for that Democrat if I believe that they truly are going to try and make those changes. But for right now, I'm going to vote for Trump. Because Trump is talking about the things that matter to me. And I don't care about race. I don't care about all the isms that they try and throw at us to fearmonger us to continue to vote against our best interests. The migrant situation that we have in America right now does not benefit me. It does not benefit me as a taxpayer. It does not benefit me as a citizen. It does not benefit me. So I'm going to vote against it. Inflation does not benefit me. It's hurting me in my pockets right now. It's hurting me. So I'm going to vote against it. The economy is not doing well right now. I'm going to vote against it. So I'm going to vote for the person who wants to solve these things. And right now, the only person who's trying to solve it, or at least is talking about solving it, is Trump. So me voting for Trump, at least for now, is not a reflection on me as a person. It's a reflection on the other side. They have given me no choice but to vote for him, because they've opened our borders wide open, and now we have an immigration problem. The very culture of some of the places, like I don't live in New York City, but I grew up there. The whole culture of New York City has changed. When I go down to Times Square, when I go down to 34th Street, when I go down all these different tourist areas, all I see is migrant people begging, either sitting around doing nothing, because in many of those areas, that's where their shelters are. So it's not like they're just sitting around 42nd Street because they just chose 42nd Street to be their hangout spot. No, it's where their home is at. So now 42nd Street, which used to be this beautiful tourist area with all these nice shops, is just filled with migrant people who are sitting on the ground, sitting on benches, sitting on construction, stones, artwork. They're just sitting everywhere because that's where their home is. Their home is in the Row Hotel on 44th Street. Their home is in the Roosevelt Hotel on 43rd Street. This is where they live, right? It's crazy. When I go to, and then in the nighttime, if I go past these areas, all I see is young migrant women selling their bodies. In these areas that are supposed to be family-friendly places, I see these women prostituting themselves. When I go to Queens, New York, because I want to go shopping or something, all I see is a open-air flesh market that rivals that of Bangkok. filled with Latina and Asian women. The whole culture of these areas have changed. They've literally changed the culture of entire communities. Because when you just influx hundreds of thousands of people into one area, it's going to change. The question is, does it change for the better or does it change for the worse? And I dare say, at least in the short term, it's changed for the worse. I don't know what the second generation of these migrants are going to be. Maybe they might be assets to our communities, to our society. But right now, the short term is not looking too good. And when I look at our finances and what we're spending our money on, billions and billions of our tax dollars are going towards supporting these folks. And when you do the research, you kind of realize, hold on here, they're not even here legally. When you go to anybody who's recording, the border crossings, like to properly claim asylum, you're supposed to go through a port of entry and say, I declare asylum. And then you get a preliminary interview, and then you get released on parole into into our country. That's what the Biden administration is doing. That's not what the policy was under Trump, but that's what the Biden administration is doing. If you go film the border, all you see these people just running through cracks. They're not even properly coming through points of entry. They're sneaking through holes in our fence. That right there is enough to get them deported. I don't even know why they do that, because under the policy of the Biden administration, all they have to do is just walk to a border agent, and that's good enough. They won't get sent back. Just go through the port of Mexico. Go through the main entry where the gates are and the turnstiles. Just walk there and say, I claim asylum. That's all you have to do. But they still don't do that. They sneak through. But if you sneak through, according to our immigration law, even if you claim asylum, if you snuck through, you're supposed to get kicked out. You're supposed to get kicked out if you sneak through, but we're not even doing that. Chris Jarrett says second generation often has problems fitting in and join gangs. From what I heard, it takes a third or integration. Agreed. We're looking at the second generation right now. If you go to New York City and you ride the trains and you go on the highway, you're looking at the second generation. The second generation are 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds who are not in school, who are selling candy and selling fruits on the highway. They're selling candy and they're selling fruits on the highway. That's the second generation. The first generation, the 21s, the 25s, the 30-year-olds are selling their bodies. The men are working under fake Social Security numbers, delivering food, and robbing people on mopeds. The women are selling their bodies. The children are selling fruits, vegetables, and candy on the subways and on highways. Explain to me where out of this chaos, we are going to somehow discover the American dream coming out of this group of people. They've set themselves up for failure by coming here illegally. We have set them up for failure by allowing them to stay. All of us are complicit in this madness. Anyway, like, subscribe, join the channel. Please make sure that you hit a thumbs up. Hit a thumbs up for the channel if you haven't hit a thumbs up yet. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. There's going to be 1 or 2 people who are watching this stream right now, and they haven't even remembered to hit that subscription button. So please make sure that you hit the subscribe button now. And when it asks you how you want your notifications, make sure you set your notifications for all so that you can see when I go live, because it's very difficult to find a show after you subscribe to it if you don't set your notifications for all. So make sure you do that. Also know that Strategic Eyes Show is monetized. So if you want to send me a tip, you want to send me a super chat, I can receive it. I would appreciate it as well. We also have a merch store. You can go ahead on the Strategic Eyes merch store. You can buy some Strategic Eyes swag and support the channel that way. You guys are amazing. I hope you guys will have a wonderful day. My kids have a half a day, so I got to go get them. And you guys are great. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Strategic is out of here. Peace.